and that is a promise, is cooperating and collaborating with the opposition. I've never done it, and I will never do it. As a matter of fact, people that I have in the past had tremendous respect for, like Glenn Greenwald, one of my biggest criticisms is they deliver a lot of criticism to the Democratic Party, which is well-deserved, but sometimes they rarely share that same level of scrutiny with the Republicans. That is a big disagreement that I have with Glenn Greenwald, which usually leads Glenn Greenwald into calling me a sheepdog for the DNC and the Democratic Party. Okay? I am always way harder on the Republicans than I am on the Democrats, and the only reason why I'm hard on the Democrats is because of their conciliatory tone to Republicans as a mechanism to win elections. It's a failed theory, and the question I always ask is, do we want this to be our future? Even if Democrats won elections, by becoming closer to Republicans, do we want that? Do we want that form of governance? So what difference does it make? Are we voting so that we vote for a party that is trailing 4 years behind whatever the reactionary sentiment is on the right? Or are we actually voting for a change? That's my argument. That's what's very frustrating to me. And that is primarily my frustration with the Democratic Party broadly. Now, those things are changing right now. We've played a role in that change. We are actively playing a role in changing what the Democratic Party looks like, what the Democratic Party is promoting. We're changing the ideological makeup of the party from within. Now, that's not the final goal. I care about results. Primarily, I'm invested in defeating the Republicans. It's not a secret. It's something I've said over and over again. But that's not the end-all, be-all, of course. I don't just want to defeat Republicans and ensure that they stay away from a seat of power all across the country. I also want to make tangible changes that people can feel, that people can experience. I want to help materially improve the lives of the working class in this country and all around the world. Right? So it's not just about defeating Republicans. It's also about delivering results for people. It's about reinstilling confidence in good governance and associating good governance with the left flank, with the Bernie-crats, with the Democratic Socialists of America. That's why I love Zoran, and I think he's done a phenomenal job with this. He has delivered results for his constituents. One of the most popular politicians in the country for good reason. You understand? So the reason why I brought all of this up is because I find it completely unacceptable what Third Way is doing right now. I think it's disgusting. They are fascist collaborators. Okay? At this stage of American fascism, when Trump is the president, when the Republicans are a cultist party, I said earlier, if there's a Hitlerian tyrant in office and these supposed liberal allies at Third Way are trying to chop the anti-fascist movement's legs, what can you call them but collaborators? The time to pick a side is coming. Okay? It's no longer sweet. This shit is not sweet. It's not funny. We have to lock in. Moderate Democrats prepare for a war against the ascendant left. In this day and age, in this time, if your goal is to fight back when the federal government is actively talking about blacklisting communists, socialists, and liberal Democrats as well. Okay? If you are saying, my real enemy, oh shit, 35% off, 5+ gifted subs, level 3 hype train, by the way. At level 10, we carry the flame. Subscribe to the People's Broadcast Service, the Piker Broadcasting Service, the People's Broadcast Service. Your voluntary contributions in the form of a $6 a month subscription or a free one in the form of a Twitch Prime is the only mechanism to support the show. $35% off, 5+ gifted subs. So yeah, one moderate group says the progressive wins are deeply troubling and is planning $50 million effort against democratic socialism. The embattled establishment of the Democratic Party searched furiously for a political reset after Dr. Abdul Sayed's progressive victory in Michigan handed the party's long dominant moderate wing its most painful defeat of the year. Some strategists urgently pressed to adopt a sharper edge to tap into the fury among Democratic voters that was felling its centrist candidates. Others wanted to attack democratic socialism, undercutting a budding movement now set to have far more than a toehold in the next Congress. Yet another young Democratic socialist ousted an incumbent congressman in Detroit on Tuesday. We are preparing for the next war that is coming, said Jonathan Cowan, the president of Third Way, a leading centrist Democratic group, revealing the New York Times a new $15 million effort between now and 2028 to discredit democratic socialism. Dr. al-Sayed's win was not the blowout that some pre-election polls had predicted, but his narrow nomination in one of the country's signature swing states still represented a critical moment for the party's middle. Here's where we're at. From this day on, unless they come out and apologize for this, and unless they redirect all of those funds back to attacking Republicans, if you are a Democratic Party consultant, if you are in the DC, you have to see these people as your opposition. Okay? This is for the pod johns as well. This is for the big tent folks. These people are not a part of the tent. They're not. I'm sorry. They're not. They're not a part of the tent. And they have made their opposition unambiguous. They oppose our movement. In this day and age, when we are singularly invested in defeating Republicans, in defeating Trumpism, in defeating MAGA, if they are putting money against different components of this anti-Trump, anti-fascist movement, we have to oppose them. Okay? I'm not saying spend money against them. I'm just saying don't welcome them to your cocktail parties. Do not welcome them into your campaigns. You cannot do this. It's over. They have decided that their real opposition is the left flank. They have decided that their real opposition is not MAGA, but instead their opposition is the Democratic Socialists. I don't think the average American Democratic Party voter feels that way. Yeah, I don't even think Jon Favreau is going hard enough on these guys. I think we need to start treating these folks as what they are. Republican collaborators. That's it. That's what I think. I think these guys... Dude, I don't think most independents think DSA is a threat to America. Yes, if you were to ask the average person, what do you think is a real threat? The Democratic Socialists of America or MAGA? They have been polled on this. They say it's MAGA. So anyone that turns around and says, no, like the real centrism is about actually opposing the Democratic Socialists of America, there's an electability argument. It's very clear that there is no electability argument here. They are simply focusing their efforts on their left flank. These are Dinos. They're not even Pinos. These are Dinos. These are Democrat in name only. Okay? It's clear they have let their side be known. It's clear that they think MAGA is not an ever-present danger to American democracy, to the entire world. They think that threat is coming from the left. Their fear, Dr. El-Sayed was paving a path for a progressive to seize the party's presidential nomination in 2028 and then go on to lose the general election. It's deeply troubling to see the radical far-left candidates winning in places that are potentially presidential swing states. Most party leaders, from Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan to Chuck Schumer in New York to the Vice President Kamala Harris, quickly embraced Dr. El-Sayed's Senate candidacy given the stakes of the Michigan seat at play. But some moderates see the emerging left as a danger. The fact that Democrats recently put Michigan in an early lineup of presidential nominating states, a race just 18 months away, only heightened the significance of Dr. El-Sayed's victory. For now, the next big test is only a week away. In Wisconsin, Francisca Hong, a Democratic socialist and the state assemblywoman representing the progressive hotbed of Madison, has emerged as the party's frontrunner for governor in another key battleground race. Mr. Cowan said the $15 million his group would spend through 2028 was not directed at individual candidates. Instead, the group plans to target the Democratic Socialists of America movement, which he believes is a mortal danger for the Democrats. Okay, so I know what they're going to do. They're going to use $15 million in ad spend to attack me and attack DSA. That's what they're going to do. They're going to do what the Republicans have been doing. They're going to be doing exactly what they've been doing already, which has failed in spectacular fashion thus far. They're just going to continue doing it. That's it. Yeah. By the way, just want to mention, Third Way does not disclose its donors. Dark money, Third Way, and its president, Jonathan Cowan, tell the New York Times they're in a war with the Democratic left. The centrist group doesn't disclose its funders, but glimpses are possible. It's billionaires and corporate lobbyists. Okay? Yeah. I wish Shama Savant won in Washington State. She should have been given more support by leftist socialist streamers. No, you're right. That's why she lost. Come on, guys. You know, it's time to get back. It's time to get back to reality a little bit, don't you think? Hey, Shane. Is there a reason you don't mention who funds Third Way, Welcome Pack, and the Center for New Liberalism? They're backed entirely by pro-Israel billionaires, big pharma, big oil, big tobacco, Wall Street, etc. Isn't this worth noting when reporting on their alleged motives? Yeah. Third Way has gotten a lot of play in this cycle, largely because they decided I was their primary opposition. And what's interesting about it is this. Third Way is actually at the heart of the Democratic Party's failure since the Clinton era. The reason why the Democratic Party is seen as a pro-corporate, smug, elitist party is almost entirely because of the Third Way. Third Way neoliberalism is what destroyed the working class foundation and base for the Democratic Party, especially in states like Michigan. And we're actively trying to win that back. We're actively trying to work on working class interests right now, as Third Way is doing an amazing job of failing to rein the party back in that direction. We've got a think tank full of people cranking out new ideas, and we've been crisscrossing the country all year calling for a pugnacious, big idea generating, get shit done, combative centrism, nothing tepid or technocratic. Dems must offer a compelling vision of reform that takes the interest on all sides. That's the only path that has put a Dem in the White House, and a big part of our work, but failing to confront this DSA lunacy will keep us stuck in the wilderness. I'm sorry. They're 100%. They're no longer controlled opposition. They're just opposition. Okay? They're just opposition. They came out of the gates swinging in 2024, talking about their primary opposition to stop AOC. Centrist Dems launched 2028 mission. This was reported in March 1st, 2026. But ever since the election, their primary focus has been to stop AOC. That's it. That's their goal. Since then, obviously, Zohran Mamdani came into the fray, and we have obviously put a lot of Democratic socialists in seats of power all across the country. So they've been failing, and they are going to continue to fail, because the difference between us and them is a very significant one. Simply put, we believe in something. They do not. Okay? And the things that we believe in are objectively popular. The things that they want to advance are not. That's what it comes down to. I just hope that more liberals recognize the similarities between what these centrist Democrats are saying under the auspices of the party and what the Republicans are saying. We have allowed snakes into our ranks for far too long. Okay? If they are channeling the exact same kind of reactionary sentiment that the far right is channeling against Democratic candidates, they are not Democrats. A lot of these people have said, I'm not a part of the tent. They are. The reality of the matter is, we're here to fucking stay. Okay? Because guess what? No matter which way you cut it, what is a party but it's voters? And what do the voters want? This past Tuesday night, we learned what the voters want. That's it. The voters get to decide who is a part of the tent. Neoliberal consultants don't. And perhaps for far too long, neoliberal consultants did, and that was the problem. That was the problem with the Democratic Party. That is the reason why Michigan is treated like a swing state. That is the reason why Wisconsin is a swing state. We say no more. That's it. They can cry, they can yell. We have to just be a little bit more careful with who we perceive is a part of this movement. But it's very clear that these guys are not a part of it. Yeah. This person asked a very good question. Where was his energy when Piker sat on stage with Kamala during the DNC? Why was no one asking her to condemn? That question gives away the whole game. They want a disavowal now because Piker's challenge of power structures is very transparent. Like, I was a creator for Kamala. I was invited to the DNC. You know what I mean? No attack ads back then. These very same media outlets were covering me in relatively favorable terms. No attack ads back then. What is this? Jeremy Fassler? They have nothing on you. Apparently people watch you because of midlife crisis now. Yeah. I wrote this piece for Salon analyzing the Pod Bros' attraction to people like Grant Plattner and Hassan Piker as their version of a midlife crisis with Plattner Piker et al. As the political equivalence of a sports car you buy to stay young. Sure, buddy. Keep coping. No, I think the Podjohns are young in comparison to a lot of these other folks. And they're younger, right? And they're also on the independent media side. And they have to be more responsive to the whims and to the changes that are taking shape in the base of the party. And that's the reason why they're actually smart enough to recognize that they have to be welcoming to people like us, that the Democratic Party's inability to welcome people like us is what loses the elections. Agree, organizing tactics are best investment for the center. Do you think coming up with a vision that excites voters is better than support the shared vision of candidates who have proven to win the broadest range of voters? Well, you've hit on my biggest issue with your project. Do you think politics is a choice between a vision that excites voters and candidates who can win the broadest range of support? Our last two Democratic presidents was able to do both, and I think that's what our candidates should aspire to. Regardless, you and Third Way Tweet don't seem to be doing either with this new $15 million project, at least according to the Times piece you're quoted in. Just opposition research into DSA. And then he alleges that he's actually just engaging in community building project Welcome Fest, which is not very welcoming to the left, ironically enough. It's just welcoming to ExxonMobil, Chevron, data centers, AI, Israel. It's not exactly welcoming to what the voters are demanding. It's just another way to try to figure out how to manipulate the voters, how to dupe the voters into not voting for left flank candidates that say, enough is enough with this fucking corporate strategy. We're done with this shit. We want our lives to change for the better. Endorsement tracker. Most endorsed candidates. Endorser scoreboard. I mean, Zoran's doesn't count. I'm at a 63% win rate. 12 wins, 7 losses, 4 pending, 2 contested wins. Sunrise is above me at 13 wins, 65%. Bernie Sanders at 12 wins, 4 losses, 75% win rate. This is funny endorsement tracker. I mean, you don't only endorse guaranteed wins, right? So pretty strong. Yeah, I don't just go after safe seats. I don't just endorse guaranteed victories. As a matter of fact, I haven't endorsed a single guaranteed victory, I would say. None of the people that I've endorsed are guaranteed to win. In any case, yes, despite you alleging that candidates who win swing districts are bad for the crooked media bottom line and bad for their investors like Soros, which aside from being offensive is not in any way true, we've had many of those candidates on the pod, have raised money and organized volunteers for swing district candidates over the last decade through Vote Save America, and I've personally moderated a fundraiser for Christina Bohannon and Rebecca Cook, who are awesome. Good to know the $15 million Oppo project into DSA isn't yours, though I think constantly popping off on why socialists are bad is less productive than some of the great work you guys are clearly doing for swing district candidates. Yeah, I think it's bullshit. I think these guys are opposition. I don't think look, I can't tell them what to do, but I don't think these guys are a part of this fucking broad movement. It's very clear that they are positioning themselves as antagonistic to certain elements of the movement in an irredeemable manner. Okay, you can have criticisms of some of the things that the DSA is doing or whatever, but as long as you're not spending money, or if you're spending money in any direction but your rightward direction, you're an op. You're a Republican. You are a Republican who is claiming to be a part of the broad Democratic Party coalition at a time when everyone needs to lock in and unify to defeat Republicans. Of course, unfortunately for all of us involved in this, many of these guys are pro-Israel. Like, that's it. That's their primary enmity towards their left position. The leftists are anti-Israel. The broad base of support in the party is anti-Israel. These guys are pro-Israel. And they just freak the fuck out. They're like, no, we have to somehow destroy this like anti-Israel movement. And we have to make the party a worse party overall. Make the party less responsive to the needs of the base. It's fucking ridiculous, dude. It's fucking ridiculous. It's outright unacceptable. Like, instead of celebrating the victory of Abdul al-Sayed, they're like, oh, we got to spend extra money against Abdul al-Sayed. Well, that didn't work last time. That didn't work when AIPAC did it. Yeah. Haley Stevens is doing more than Third Way because, as Sammy Gold correctly pointed to, yes, Haley Stevens is, pro-Israel, but she's also still a party apparatchik. Same with Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer dreams of Israel as well. Chuck Schumer says,
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
But you know what else comes to Chuck Schumer's dreams? You know what else comes to Chuck Schumer in his dreams? The Democratic Senate majority. I mean, this is like bare minimum, guys. Bare fucking minimum. Like, I voted for Adam Schiff. I've talked about it openly. He is awful. He is god awful. You know why I did that? Because we need to have Democrats in Congress. That's it. That's it. Thank God Chuck Schumer still recognizes that reality. Of course he's going to recognize that reality. He is still the Senate majority. He wants to be the Senate majority leader, right? So we cannot have Republicans in Congress. We cannot have Republicans in a seat of power. I'd much rather oppose and deal with a fucking Democrat who sucks ass than a Republican who sucks ass, because the Republican is trying to kill me. We haven't gotten to the point where the Democrat is trying to kill me too, even though we are getting there. I used to say this as well. I used to say the worst Democrat is better than the best Republican. I don't say it no more, because the worst Democrat is John Fetterman. And John Fetterman is literally worse than some other. Like, John Fetterman is objectively worse than Thomas Massie. John Fetterman virtually believes all of the same things that Thomas Massie believes, all the crazy, kooky, libertarian, like far-right reactionary nonsense. And then on top of that, he's unbelievably pro-Israel. John Fetterman is more right-wing on the issue of Israel than, like, the Republican caucus is. John Fetterman is worse than maybe even some other Republicans in Congress. It's crazy because he has a fucking brain issue, you know? But yes, broadly speaking, you're not wrong. Yes, the worst Democrat is still better than the best Republican. Broadly speaking, you're correct. Is Fetterman worse than Gottheimer? Yes, even worse than Gottheimer. Gottheimer at least is like, as a Democratic representative, Josh Gottheimer is unbelievably pro-Israel. He's an Israel firster. But if you look at like other domestic issues, like Gottheimer comes across as a little bit better than what is this? Are they glazing us? Times of Israel? Oh, hey, it's me and Crystal Ball getting some positive coverage in the Times of Israel. You love to see it. How a new left-wing U.S. media ecosystem is helping elevate progressive candidates. Zateo, 700,000 Substack subscribers, up 50% from a year ago. The majority report was Sam Cedar has more than 2 million subscribers on YouTube and roughly 75% of listeners under the age of 55. Progressive commentator and activist Hassan Piker has more than 3 million followers on Twitch. For campaign strategists, the appeal of this new media environment is simple. Their candidates can have long, in-depth conversations on policy issues, the kind seldom seen on cable news, engage directly with voters, and generate clips that can be blasted on social platforms. Yup. It's not good. It's not good that they're fucking... It's not good that they are putting this level of attention on us. I will admit. I mean, I think they're starting to... Josh Gottheimer's starting to grow on me. It's funny. Yeah, Josh Gottheimer is an op too. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know if Josh Gottheimer is worse than Fetterman or Fetterman's worse than Josh. Who knows? Or even Moskowitz too. It's another one. Moskowitz is very far right when it comes to, Israel-related things like Trump's attitude towards Iran. He's in favor of it. Moskowitz was the first Democrat on the Doge caucus. You know, these are unacceptable red lines, in my opinion. Especially considering that these are not red lines that you're crossing for some like electoral calculation. You're crossing these red lines because that's your personal investment. That's your personal opinion, directly at odds with the needs of your constituents. It's fucking bullshit. Yeah, $15 million for Oppa research, polling, and talking to a room full of Democrats who already agree with them. Okay, got it. He said the effort would include opposition research into DSA polling, social media programs, and educating Democratic activists and leaders. It would target both proud Democratic socialists and those such as Dr. El-Sayed, whom he derided as performing the DSA dodge, flirting with Democratic socialists enough to get their organizing manpower and support while remaining distant enough to avoid the explicit label. How this discrediting campaign will affect the current midterm cycle, potentially undercutting Democratic nominees in swing state races and undermining the party's chances of retaking the Congress, remains unclear. Also, find it funny that part of the charge here is Democratic candidates using the support of one of the most organized machines of the left without embracing their platform. The logical conclusion is that Sherrod Brown is bad when individual DSA members phone bank for him. It's abundantly clear that Third Way sees losing the House Senate as short-term pain for the long-term goal of eradicating the ideology that half of the millennials and Zoomers who vote for them are cool with. Luckily for the left, they are utterly incapable of doing this. I wouldn't underestimate them. And the reason for why I wouldn't underestimate them is because, you know, money does matter a lot. Nobody wastes money like this, you know. We have to out-organize them, and that's the only way that we can turn that money cannon into a waste. What is this? The 700,000 votes from Haley are too much to not accept her? What are we talking about? I don't think Haley Stevens has a real constituency of like Haley Stevens heads. I don't think that's real. This is another thing that Michelle, who wrote that New York Times piece that we were going to look at yesterday, also failed to comprehend. I kind of want to talk about that real quick. I want to briefly allude to this because Michelle Goldberg is a very interesting reporter. She's an opinion columnist at the New York Times. She wrote an article about Abdul El-Sayed's victory. And there's one piece in that reporting that I thought was very interesting. Do we have the last piece that she wrote? Oh, the populist left has a theory. We're all about to test it. That was the piece that she wrote. Okay, let me remove paywall this. And then let's get to it. So here it is. Last week, before his victory in Michigan, his extraordinarily bitter Democratic Senate primary, I asked Abdul El-Sayed how he planned to bring the party together if he won. The campaign pit El-Sayed, a progressive public health official backed by Senator Bernie Sanders and AOC, not just against Representative Haley Stevens, but also against much of the state's Democratic establishment. She used the word jejune to describe you. Wait, she talked about me in this? Oh. With all the bad feelings the primary engendered, I figured El-Sayed would need to make some overtures ahead of November. Representative Hillary Skolton, a Democrat who had refused to commit to voting for him in part because of his decision to campaign with the leftist streamer Hassan Piker, who expresses jejune. I have no idea what that word means. That's crazy. I am a fairly well-read person. This is the first time I've encountered this term. What does this mean? What does jejune mean? That's cool. Jejune is an adjective that means lacking interest, significance, or intellectual substance, dull or insipid, or displaying a child's simplistic, immature quality. I guess she owned me on that because I didn't know what that word meant, and she's saying I'm a simpleton. Sympathies for all sorts of brutal anti-American regimes, Hamas among them. I wanted to know how he tried to persuade people like her. El-Sayed didn't accept the premise that there were many people like her. There's this operational sense of the party that says elites carry constituents, he said. If that was true, I'd lose. It's just not true. The only thing that has been driving any support for our opposition has been the $60 million of lies being put on TV. So I say You are jejune. They said the R slur without saying it. I mean, I think Michelle, ironically enough, is the one who's out of touch, because if Hillary Scholten carried any real sympathies, her district wouldn't have gone to Abdul al-Sayed by 65%. She wrote this article after the electoral victory. She had the capacity to actually look at the numbers, and yet she chose not to. I find that to be interesting. I don't think Michelle Goldberg is a stupid person. I actually think she's a very interesting writer, as I said even before I read this piece. I read a lot of her pieces. I think she's ideologically blinded, which is what she says Abdul is doing. And I'll explain to you why. This argument will be very important, because the last couple of lines that I'm going to get into directly contradict what she did here. Okay? El-Sayed didn't accept the premise, which he shouldn't, because he's right. That sounded rather strong. The only thing I asked, do you really not believe that there are people whose opposition to your ideas or skepticism of your ideas is sincere? I think there are really quite few, he replied. Perhaps there are more than he thought. Given the forces arrayed against them, El-Sayed's victory, which is called on Wednesday morning, is a remarkable accomplishment and evidence of widespread democratic distrust in their party leaders. But after polls predicted a double-digit blowout, it ended up being a narrow win, less than a single point as of this writing. These results are likely to panic Democrats who are already anxious about El-Sayed's electability. It's one thing to charge into a general election with an unconventional candidate who was an overwhelming voter mandate, another with one who didn't even hit 50%. But they also give El-Sayed, who has never before run against a Republican, a chance to recalibrate. He has so many skills as a politician. He's quick, magnetic, overflowing with infectious confidence. But he also has a blind spot, one endemic to his movement, an inability to grasp how and why people of good faith might see the world differently. Like Sanders before him, El-Sayed seems to assume that there's a hidden reservoir of voters hungry for progressive populist policies, if only they can be reached and mobilized. On Monday, he described his campaign to me as the test of this hypothesis. As he sees it, unconventional wisdom is fundamentally mistaken about how to win his state, which voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and 2024. We have this outdated model that everybody moves on a continuum from left to right, El-Sayed said. Establishment Democrats assume the path to victory lies in staking out an ideological middle ground. I have an alternative hypothesis, he said, that people so hate the establishment on both sides of the aisle that they were willing to hold their nose and vote for Donald Trump twice. Because if this was really a moderate state, Donald Trump is no moderate. That would mean that the best person to take on the Republican Senate nominee, Mike Rogers, a multimillionaire former congressman known for his friendliness to Big Pharma, is a populist outsider like El-Sayed. So, Michelle Goldberg basically says, Abdul al-Sayed is correct here, but Michelle Goldberg basically says like his inability to reckon with the reality that there are real moderate voters out there who didn't just vote against Abdul al-Sayed due to the electability argument, but instead voted against him because they oppose Medicare for all, that they oppose Abdul al-Sayed's lack of interest in sending money to Israel. That is totally ridiculous. Because if that was the case, and I had this conversation with Simon, the reporter that's following me along this journey, if you remember, we had a brief back and forth on this on the night of Abdul's election victory, where he said, don't you feel as though there are people who are legitimately disturbed with Abdul's statements about Israel? And if you recall, my retort to that was no. And I'm confident in that belief. And it is not because I have a imbecilic support for anti-American regimes in the way that this high-minded intellectual Michelle Goldberg is explaining. It's because not only did I go up and down the state, but I also looked at the ad spend. $34 million coming from AIPAC. Not a single one of those ads brought up Abdul's lack of interest in supporting Israel. They called him a terrorist. Not a single one of those ads talked about Haley Stevens' support for Israel. That's it. If Israel's support was such a favorable point of contention, if that was the real wedge here, then they would have been running loudly and proudly about Haley Stevens saying,
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
and yet they didn't. So why is that the case? Because AIPAC understands, better perhaps than Michelle Goldberg, that pro-Israel politics is poison. Pro-Israel politics is not only poison in the Democratic Party primaries, where we believe that everyone is super woke, it's just poisonous across the board. That is precisely the reason why there is never a mention of Israel in any of their ads. That's it. And to further test this hypothesis that Abdul is presenting, I present to you the district that Hillary Skolton is from. Abdul El Sayed won that district by 65%. It's that simple. It is that simple. If Abdul's politics were so terrifying, if people from Hillary Skolton's very own district opposed it, Abdul Al Sayed would not have gotten 65% in that district. If you were to poll the large majority of Haley Stevens voters, especially in black districts, they would tell you two things. They voted for Haley Stevens. This is always the case in primaries. They would tell you two things. One, that Barack Obama trusted Haley Stevens and endorsed Haley Stevens, and Barack Obama's word is bond. And two, they would tell you that they thought Abdul Al Sayed was maybe a little too radical to defeat Mike Rogers. The electability argument falsely presented and weaponized against the left flank for far too long. Those voters are defensive voters. Defensive against the Republicans primarily. Those voters are not voting on ideology. Those voters are not voting for Haley Stevens. They're voting against Mike Rogers, and they were told that Haley Stevens would be a far better opposition to Mike Rogers. Those voters will always vote against the Republicans. They will come out and vote against the Republicans. This is precisely the reason why, of course, Abdul Al Sayed should never take a vote for granted. He should go out to all of those districts. He should go out and stump in all of those districts. He should secure the coveted Obama endorsement, which will help out big time in the state of Michigan. And I do think he will receive that Obama endorsement. A real endorsement, not a fake one that AIPAC presented as one being given to Haley Stevens. But the reality of the matter is, the pathway to securing those votes is not through Hillary Skolton. I would go so far as to say it's not even through Haley Stevens, at least for the older black voters that did not vote for Abdul Al Sayed, but voted for Haley Stevens. That's the reality. It's not through these consultants. It's not through kissing the ring of DC establishment elites. It's by putting the pedal to metal and going out to these districts and talking to these people, showing them who you are and what you represent and how you will help these folks out. Maybe even highlighting how dangerous Mike Rogers is and how you oppose him. That's it. That's it. This is something that Abdul El-Sayed understands, and I really appreciate him for recognizing this. This is a unique position. Democrats, for far too long, have made it seem as though the DC elites actually understand the moderate voters. When in fact, I've thought about this a lot, especially in the aftermath of this race. Most Democratic Party politicians do not assume positions that they believe the base actually hold. Most party politicians and most politics in general is a defensive posture against corporate expenditures. Most of these Democrats do not have this well-earned organic loyalty towards the nation state of Israel. They're just worried about AIPAC spending against them. Most Democrats do not take a position against, renewable energy because they hate it or because it won't bring jobs into their districts or because they want their districts to continue being poisoned by smokestacks, like the ones that Donovan McKinney opposes, the ones that Donovan McKinney's family has been impacted by because of environmental reasons, because those factories are always built in the backyards of black and brown neighborhoods and never in wealthier districts. They oppose change because they're worried about being spent against by the oil and gas lobby, by the fossil fuel industry. They are not pro data centers because they think that there is a tremendous appetite for construction of data centers in these people's backyards. They're for it because data centers spend for these districts and for these seats, and they do not want to be opposed by the moneyed interest. That is how politics has been played for far too long. The candidates that we support, that we endorse, the candidates that are a part of our broader movement here, oppose this kind of corporate expenditure. That's it. Simply put, this is a different type of doing politics. It's a different type of doing politics. One that I believe is undemocratic. Sorry, I just saw another fucking new thing. Hasan Piker trashes Michigan Democrats' unity effort. In case you missed it, Abdullah says top campaign surrogate Hasan Piker is lashing out at Michigan Democrats, rejecting calls to unify the party after a majority of Democrats voters rejected El-Sayed's extreme dangerous agenda. In case you missed it, Senate Leadership Fund out with press release focused on Hasan Piker. For liberals who think I oppose them, here's the situation. Okay? Will you get duped by the Republican charlatans and Republican propaganda? Or will you unify to defeat the Republicans? Unfortunately, many consultants who I was speaking out against here, they're using this as an opportunity. This is the New York Post. This is a fucking dish rag. We need to stop. We need to become more partisan, okay? Simply put, we have to become more partisan. We have to become more anti-Republican, okay? That's it. Hasan was right. I don't care what he said. Oh, yeah. Representative Dan Crenshaw tells Americans facing high prices to stop whining, get a job, and eat ramen. For your information, they're pumping it on Fox News. I just saw it on Facebook. Yeah, they're trying to turn this into... They are trying to turn this into the Hillary Clinton deplorables moment, which is ironic because... It's ironic because I have always advocated to earn every single vote. Every single vote. I've said this to centrist Democrats. I've said this to left flank Democrats. It's totally against my principles to act as though we don't have to earn every vote. We always do, and we always will. That's why I spend so much time on canvassing operations, so much time on phone banking operations. You should never take someone's vote for granted. It is fundamentally undemocratic. Fundamentally undemocratic. Shame on the DC elites that took this as an opportunity to lie because they felt called out. Shame on them for setting up the grounds that Mike Rogers is now comfortably leaning into, the Islamophobic sentiment that he is also fomenting in a perhaps less tactful manner. It's totally ridiculous. When are you doing the census? Soon. We got to do the HasanAbi head census. We do it in August usually, don't we? Yeah. Trump on El Sayed says, for our great Republican senators, friends of mine, all, please be advised that the communist Democrat Senate candidate for Michigan, Abdul Rahman Mohammed El Sayed, is touting as perhaps his single most important topic the termination of the filibuster. I watched yesterday, and he's gone termination crazy. If he succeeds, the Democrats will gain 4 senators, 8 congressmen, many electoral and popular votes, a stacked Supreme Court with 23 justices, and I will